ClearCOGS is an AI-powered forecasting system for restaurants. What we do is we use AI to suck up all of the data that already exists and turn it into precise answers around what to prep, what to order, and what your staff budget should look like so that you make better decisions and have a more profitable and efficient operation.
Welcome to another episode of WISKing It All. We're joined today with Matt Wampler, CEO and co-founder of ClearCOGS. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Angelo, thanks for having me.
I'm excited. We're just kind of talking offline about how it's been crazy that we actually have never met face-to-face, but we're like very similar product and pain points we're trying to solve. A lot of friends in common, so it's great to meet you, face to face.
Well, I don't have nearly as good of a mustache as you do.
I appreciate that. So as always, I always like to start with people's why. So we're definitely going to get into ClearCOGS, what you do, how you help restaurants, all that good stuff. But I like to understand people's journey. So I want to understand what made you start ClearCOGS. So maybe we can go back in time and start there.
Yeah, it all originated out of the pain I felt as an operator. I got into the industry young. I was 21 and some guy had run a Jimmy John's into the ground. And, I was willing to take a gamble and put everything on the line and go take over it. And so, I turned it around. I was fortunate enough to make it successful and open up a bunch of other units or, a few other units.
Yeah.
But it was later on in life, I got into this whole technology and programming. And I was just blown away by where technology is today and yet where the reality of restaurants are today and, how we could bridge that gap. And so it really just started with, that simple fundamental premise of I was running my business on Excel spreadsheets and guessing there's got to be a better way.
I feel that. I resonate because, it's crazy and people might not realize this, but to this day, even with all the tech advancements and AI and ChatGPT and crazy involvement, most of the industry is still primarily Excel. There's competitors, there's you guys, there's WISK, there's whatever, but unless you see differently, but from what I see out there, a large majority of people are still on spreadsheets.
Well, even if you've got a great inventory management system and I'm tracking all of this, a lot of times it's, okay, well, let me take the information out of there and then I'll do the analysis on my own, right? So it's not that I don't have any infrastructure and it's all just Excel spreadsheets, but it was things like for me, 2 hours prior to close, do I need to bake another cycle of bread? We literally would stick our head out the door and look around at weather and line at the bar.
That's amazing. I love that. No, but you're right. Part one is, are you even getting the data? Part two is, what the hell do I do with this data? So that's a fair point. I'd love to hear, and we're going to get way more into ClearCOGS. I'm just curious, if you remember any nuggets, I'm sure you do, from back in your Jimmy John's day. What are some things you did, just because this will actually be super practical to our listeners, what are some things you did to take a struggling, franchise and turn it around? Because maybe there's some nuggets we can share here with our listeners.
Well, first off, I give all of the credit to Jimmy John's corporate. They basically provided me a playbook. I, as a 21-year-old, didn't know anything about running a restaurant. So my job was really just to walk in each day and follow the systems and procedures. And that's really, the core of it. But we did one thing in particular, and that was we stopped doing all marketing. We stopped doing all of our, giving out free sandwiches. And all we did was focus on execution. Can we make fast, flawless sandwiches? I know I did a big push on delivery. I think the best message we could ever give is delivering a sandwich in under 5 minutes. Wow. That's memorable. So, instead of spending money on marketing, we hired up extra delivery drivers. And it really quickly started to gain and resonate with the customer because, sure, they're thinking about delivery. Should I get a pizza? And it was like, I could order Jimmy John's and they could be here in 6 minutes.
Awesome. That's smart. That's really good. So focus on the actual customer experience and let that be the marketing in a sense.
That's your product. Don't ever forget it.
I love that. I love that. And so, shifting gears a little. So, building up the restaurants, then opening a few more. Obviously, you hit some pain points and you spoke about it. So, what really gave you the inspiration to shift from running restaurants to founding a tech company? Because obviously there's a shift there. So I'd love to hear kind of when did you say, F it, I'm going into the tech space?
Yeah, I mean, it was natural curiosity. So it was the pandemic. I started to take online coding classes.
Oh,
And
shit. Okay.
yeah. And it consumed me. I just loved everything about it.
That's
And
so cool.
yeah, like any somewhat entrepreneurial person, I instantly thought, wow, there's all of these uses. I can do this. And then you
That's
find out
awesome.
pretty quickly you really can't. Like, yeah, just because you can write a few lines of code doesn't mean that you can build enterprise software.
Right. Hello world. Yeah, you're like, no, I feel you. That's so funny. That's cool. I think that's something a lot of entrepreneurs have in common is the idea, and you nailed it, that word curiosity. It's just like when you're curious, you just dig deeper, you learn more, and like that energy kind of is something I think I've seen in myself, in you, and in a lot of entrepreneurs. Just that natural, like, I want to see if there's a better way. There must be a better way. Let me look. Oh, there's nothing. Why not? Let me speak to customer. Like that natural curiosity is such an important skill, I think, in entrepreneurs.
I also think there's something with restaurateurs, and I know I was on the franchise side, but you build this skill set of, if I gave you a new tool, what are the things you could do with it? Restaurants are really good at creatively utilizing whatever they have around them. And so I kind of walked into this tech world and was like, this is a new tool. I can think of 8 different ways I would use this in a restaurant.
Awesome. That's so cool. And it's funny, I always joke around, but I always say like a restaurant, for me at least, a restaurateur, I should say, is like an advanced entrepreneur, because when you run a restaurant, like an entrepreneur is just being hard. It's hard in general. Like I won't underplay it, but I find like a restaurant, it's like you're doing like, it's the master class, because it's the marketing, it's the sales, it's the ops, it's everything, legal and min, especially in the early days when you're running the show. So it's a great master class at being an entrepreneur, because you have to wear so many hats.
Well, and I'd be curious to get your take on this, but as a technology vendor now, it's interesting because restaurants are so creative. They come up with all kinds of ways to work around problems.
True.
I'm sure you guys go and bring in your back of house software and they're like, oh, we figured out how to, build our systems and procedures so we just don't need this, instead of bringing the right technology in the first place.
Right. It's something we've seen. They're resilient. Restaurants are resilient. They'll always figure out a way. But I will also say most of them, not all. Some you get people that like, they're hard headed. They're like, it's my way. It's the best way. But I find most restaurateurs are pretty open minded and reasonable. So like if you show them a better way, they're open to it. I would say the caveat is it's got to be 5x, 10x better. It can't be 1.2 times better, because then it's just like it's not worth the pain of switching, because they're like most humans, they're habits of creatures of habit, I should say. So I would say like there definitely has to be enough of a gap where if your solution is that much better, they're listening. If it's a little better, they're like, we're okay.
Now, there's nothing I love more than talking to people on the operations side of restaurants, because literally they'll give you 30 seconds, hear what it is that you do, and decide whether or not they want to even move forward with the conversation. If they like what they hear, they're going to have 3 really hard questions for you that are incredibly practical right away.
It's so true. It's so true. For us, one thing we look at, I'm curious to hear on your end, but for us, what we found is we love when restaurants we work with are doing something. Something can mean Excel. It can mean spreadsheets, but just something. Because for us, the ones that have always backfired or haven't gone well are the ones that have the intention, but they haven't done anything. So it could be a hospitality group, and they're like, look, we've been around 15 years, but we've never done inventory, which is crazy, but we want to start. What I realize is it never pays to be the first. So now we're like, hey, pick another company and we'll see you in 6 months. Because being the guinea pig when someone hasn't done anything, it's a really hard battle, because you're introducing work. So like they went from nothing to something. Whereas if they're doing something, even pen and paper, it's very natural, because like, oh, I see the benefits. I see how this is easier, faster, etc. So I wonder on your side, How do you guys think about that? When you come with your ClearCOGS solution, do you have that same kind of I guess issue where like if someone's doing nothing, it's uphill, or are they pretty open? Like I'm curious to get your perspective.
I've never really looked at it that way, but I really like your perspective. I think it makes total sense. On our end, we're always looking for partners. We're less of a vendor and more of a partner with them.
Got it.
And so if they're not trying to do something, if they're, let's put it this way, if they are doing something, they're coming to you and saying, I'm trying to solve this. Can you help me? If they're not doing anything, it's typically, I want this to no longer be a problem. I want it off my plate. Can you deal with it? And technology in restaurants, again, tends to be more of a partnership. You're working together on these problems.
Yes, big time. It's something we've noticed too. Like as much as we're a tech company, because you're in a hospitality space, the hospitality side of it, so customer support, the onboard, it's crucial. It's one of the biggest feedbacks we get is like, I was using this other company and man, the onboarding wasn't great, or it took too long, or support takes too long to answer. And I think it's one of the tough things about being in the tech space in hospitality is like you need the hospitality bar is high, but the tech needs to be good too. So it's like it's the best of both worlds, but it's a lot of pressure on a company. I'm curious, how do you guys deal with that side of the business?
Well, we're a little bit more of a bespoke product. We're really built around our customers. The product at the end of the day is answers to the questions you need each day. Those could be questions around what to prep, what to order. For me, it would have been, how much bread do I need to have up 2 hours prior to close? And we're really getting in and interviewing the brand and understanding what outcomes they're looking for from those before we build the product. So, at that point, it's kind of they're bought in and we're making it easier to use the product than to not use the product. So we have less of those issues.
That makes sense. And for people listening now, I want to start diving deeper into ClearCOGS. So people are getting a sense, and you mentioned some of the questions you answer, but let's go a bit deeper. So for people listening, what does ClearCOGS do? Is it an app? Is it a web app? Is it what can they expect? So let's go through. I know this is going to be an easy question for you, is what you do on a daily basis, but let's just paint the picture for our restaurant listeners.
Yeah, ClearCOGS is an AI-powered forecasting system for restaurants. What we do is we use AI to suck up all of the data that already exists and turn it into precise answers around what to prep, what to order, and what your staff budget should look like so that you make better decisions and have a more profitable and efficient operation.
I love that. And then is there a typical type of customer you work with, or any restaurant, just to kind of paint a picture there as well?
Yeah, we typically work with fast casual QSR restaurants.
Okay.
Once you've gotten over that hump of, 5 to 10 units and you're at 15 units or so, you've got a written down playbook that, a guy like me would be coming in to execute, and you just want to systemize, the answers that they use each day. That's about the time that you want to start rolling out a system like ours.
Got it. That's super helpful. And let me ask you. So let's go a bit deeper, because I love what you're saying. Right? It's there's no shortage of data. It's what do I do with this data? It's something I hear from restaurants all the time. It's like, just tell me what to do. It's that's what they want. They want to know the actual action, not just here's your beverage cost. It's like, now what? Here's your food cost. But now what? Tell me, should I order this? Should I not? Am I wasting this? Is this priced appropriately? Help me make decisions. So I'd love to hear from your point of view. What are some of the kind of data inputs you look at, right? I imagine there's a ton that you're looking at, but what are some things you look at to help them forecast and make these decisions?
We look at about 100 million data points every day just to get to the one data point that the restaurant needs.
Damn. Okay.
Typically the answer to something like, how many briskets do I smoke today? And so using that as an example, our system would go take all of the brisket sales that you've had for the past 5, 10 years, however long you have data from it. And it would look at 15-minute increments and cross-reference that with things like weather and events and the day of the week and the time of the day and how all these different variables affect your brisket sales, all to basically create a crystal ball of what brisket may do in the future. And then synthesize that down into whatever brisket related questions you have. How many briskets do I need to order on the US food truck today? You know, how much do I need to smoke tonight? What should I have at shift change? Do I need to have extra to put into my barbecue baked beans?
Wow, that's really cool. I'm like just imagining. It's huge. Like I'm thinking about it. It's like, you know, obviously weather, I imagine has a massive impact. I remember we had a client, this was years ago, near a stadium. And because it was near a stadium, it was very, very like, fluctuating based on the events, right? If there was a concert, certain crowd, depending on the singer. So it was like not only like if there was a sports game or if there was a concert and who was very different if it was Drake or I don't know, Carol G or something. Like it was just night and day. So it's super interesting to see just, by eye, like the type of stuff that would happen. But I'm curious, do you guys also look at like that type of data around? So not just weather, but maybe are there events? Are there sports things? Is there traffic? Like, 100 million data points, I imagine, yes, but I'd love to kind of chat a bit more about it.
We do. So there's a bunch of variables that are already baked in: holidays, large events, weather. And then we can also bring in bespoke data sets related to your individual operation. I like to think about it as, our system is really just a great manager. There are managers across the United States that have their finger on the pulse of their operation.
Yeah.
And know what's going to matter. They're going to know that a football game is not just a football game. If it's negative 2 degrees outside, attendance is probably going to go down and deliveries are going to go up. Yeah. And really, that's what we're replicating: a great manager's decision-making process and then just systemizing it.
It's so interesting. And sometimes there's patterns. We did very basic forecasting. We're more on the operational side, so like inventory ordering based on that and sales, whatever. But I remember when we did a bit of forecasting with this group, they were mind blown. I didn't even like pay attention, but there was a data point about when it snows, they would sell more Stella, I believe it was, but whatever. And he was obsessed with that one statistic. And he's like, that's amazing. And it was just funny how sometimes a data point that you might not think is like super interesting, but the operator is like mind blown with. So I'm curious from, your years of experience and working with clients, are there any data points that stand out? I know it might be a hard question because it's like when people ask you to tell a funny story, it's hard to think of one, but is there any data points that are just really that stand out, kind of like maybe that Stella story that you were just like amazed to see or a client was amazed to see?
So it's actually the opposite. I'm amazed at how off people's expectations are of the things they think they know.
Interesting.
I remember doing a big analysis on weather on delivery patterns, and everyone swore that deliveries just went through the roof when it would rain outside. And yeah, sure, there were more deliveries, but not that many more deliveries.
Interesting.
I don't know if it was the traffic or people didn't show up to the shift that made them feel like that much more of an acute problem. But whether it's weather or events are a little different. You get a big sports game, you're going to get hit. But how much these things are not individual variables, but the culmination of lots of variables. You had a crazy busy delivery day because it was raining, but also because it was the end of the quarter and there's an accounting firm that is one of your primary customers. And
interesting,
all these things work together. But going back to it, I'm actually interested in WISK and coming about this from a back of house system of record standpoint, because when I look at ClearCOGS, like, I don't want to do what you guys do. Like having to, you're like keeping the books on everything, and you do rely on manually inputted data. So how do you think about the difference between, let's call it inventory management software and almost just inventory tracking software?
Yeah. It's a really good question. When we started, it's funny. When we started, it was really niche on actually the bar side of things. So I'll joke around because it's been 10 years now. But when I started, I was like, I just wanted to solve a problem, curiosity, right? And I didn't think it'd be this big journey. I'm like, I wonder if I could solve this problem for some friends in the industry. And it was really like around just like how much is left in this bottle? And that's where it started. And then fast forward, once we started getting that going and building the bottle database and a Bluetooth scale and all that fun stuff, all the bar operators were like, this is great, but I need you to integrate with my POS to compare it, and I need my invoices. So it quickly evolved to full beverage, and then fast forward, we eventually added food. But to kind of answer your question, our whole philosophy was always like, if we could start at the inventory level, we can ideally build a strong foundation. Because what we found, at least at the time, I know things have been evolving now, but at that time, there was a lot of inventory management systems, but that didn't focus on the inventory part. They focus more on the other parts. And so what would end up happening is they were very good at selling, like, let's say, the reporting. And so management would like it because it'd be like, oh, look, and you'd have your food costs and beverage costs and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, great, this sounds good. And then when it came time to implementing the system, the people that were using it were like, this sucks. Like, it was easier to do this on Excel. And so it was kind of the challenge at the beginning. At least our thought process was like, can we create a system that's at the very least not fun, because I'm not going to lie and say inventory is fun, but just a lot less crappy. So like, if it took 5 hours, can we make it take an hour and a half? If it was a pain, can we just make it less painful? So that was really the mission. So I think for us, it was like boots on the ground, but like doing physical inventory, mobile app, doesn't work. We're in a wine cellar, doesn't work. Okay, we need it in offline mode. Multiple people want to count. Okay, how can we split up the work? So really for the first 2-3 years, it was just inventory. So I would say that was like Whisk's biggest differentiator, is like we really focused on that. So by the time we caught up to the other stuff of like invoice scanning or whatever, when people saw our inventory, like, okay, I could see my staff using this. But to your point, we kind of stopped there. But I think where you guys come in and like, I love what you guys do, because that's a whole other realm, is the data processing, is the all the inputs, is the predictive stuff, all that. We do it to a certain extent, but very like traditional sense, meaning like I counted my inventory, I have my sales data, I have my recipes. We can do that basic prediction, but nowhere near, let's say, like, we're not looking at weather, we're not looking at that. We're looking just at historical data they have in their account. So, I mean, off the record, we should probably talk, because maybe there's a plug where Whisk, and then you can feed some of Whisk data into ClearCOGS and even help the restaurateur more.
Well, it is funny. So I often think about back of house software is a system of record. It's like my accountant. Its job is to be reliable. Its job is to be accurate. I need to know that I'm going to get the right thing every time. When you come to this whole AI, predictive analytics, it's a very different skill set, let's say, than your accountant. And you almost don't want my accountant being too creative, but
right.
I sure want my predictive analytics AI vendor to be, tapping into DeepMind's latest, weather models to try and, improve accuracy by another 2%.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I think for us, it's like, when we look at the problem, we think about like how most restaurants, it's changed over the last few years, and you've probably seen it too. Like, they become a lot more open to tech, and I feel like now, much, much more open. But historically, I feel like restaurants were always the kind of like last to adopt tech, in a sense. Like, you would look at other industries and things that were normal were like just starting to come to the tech world. And the analogy I always give, or the story I always give, is kind of like, the coolest thing to happen, I mean, at this point, it's already been 20 years, but was, let's say, like online reservations, right? It was like, wow, you could do that. And then the biggest thing after that was like cloud point of sales, right? And it's like, so there were these like massive gaps. Now it's been like a rush, and there's been a lot of tech, but I think people are becoming more open to it. But I think that was one of the challenging / interesting things about restaurants, is that they were always the kind of last to adopt in terms of like industries adopting tech. Like, restaurants would be like, oh, let me adopt this thing that every other industry has been doing for the last 3 years,
So it was interesting. My co-founder comes from the tech side of the world. His world is putting computer chips in people's brains.
Okay.
Restaurants. And so it was funny. After about 3 months of, we're really early on in ClearCOGS, we're talking to a bunch of restaurants. He pulled me aside. He's like, Matt, these people are in the people business. It's people managing people, serving people.
Yes.
And in that very people-centric world, they're just throwing more people at every problem.
It's true.
We have a problem with, I don't know, bottles of whiskey going missing. We're going to have people count them more.
Yes,
we're going to have a person check off on a list every day that the right number of bottles are there.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. It is a very people centric. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's so funny. I love to hear, like, just to paint the picture, like, what does the process look like, let's say, for the average restaurateur? Because we got a lot of listeners, they're listening in, okay, I'm interested. This ClearCOGS thing sounds really cool. Piqued my curiosity. I got 15 or so plus, locations. What does the typical process look like? Do they, walk us through the typical journey an average, I guess, restaurateur might go through?
Yeah. So first off, there's the tech side of things. We're integrated with most of the major POS systems and back of house systems. So, there's a quick setup there. You click a button, we get access to your data. Our algorithms start to run. First thing they do is they start to pick up on all the anomalies that you have and figure out, when it looks like you might have stocked out of product, and we need to backfill that data, and when it looks like the POS is off and all of that kind of stuff. And, much like your system, I'm sure, we're taking menu mappings that have already been done so that we can figure out ingredient level stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But then the magic starts to happen. Then we get to go sit down with the operator and basically have a therapy session. Sit down for an hour. What are your problems? You're that barbecue place? Great. Tell me about brisket. Oh, we do our brisket the night before. Great. What do you want to have happen with your brisket? Do you want to run out every day? Do you want to have extra every day? Where is it do you want to hit?
Yes.
And what's the goal you're trying to achieve?
Yes.
And then we basically translate that into a machine learning model that's optimized to hit your individual goal. Wow. And while all that's going on in the background, the reality is, from a customer's perspective, I just tell you, I want to know brisket today for tomorrow, and I want to run out every day, but I'd prefer to get that extra brisket in if I can, if it's not going to cause any waste. Then the output is, here's your daily morning briefing with how many briskets you should smoke tonight for tomorrow. Typically, they're up and running in a matter of weeks. And then every additional unit literally is the click of a button, and it is up and running the next day.
That's really cool. Okay. So for people listening in, I guess they can go, is the website clearcogs.com?
ClearCOGS.com. But they also need to have a good back of house software like a WISK or a Cogswell or one of those. Because, without a POS and a back of house, like you said, it's going to be hard to meet them where they're at.
Yeah. Well, listen, off the podcast, we should definitely chat, because I think there's some ways, if we can get you the data, I'd love to chat more. I mean, it sounds like ClearCOGS could definitely help even some of our existing clients, which is super cool. So we'll definitely chat more about that.
I love it, man. You heard it here first. This is the makings of a 2025 partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love it. I love what you guys are doing.
I did have one quick question for you.
Yeah, please.
Bar. So one of the most common questions that we get is on alcohol management and liquor inventory.
So we do well because we started there. Yeah.
It scares the hell out of me. I guess in Canada you guys do measure it out, right? Am I right on that?
Yeah. And like most of our clients these days are US, but US and Canada, most people historically, it's changing, but most people will eyeball it. So they'll look at this, they'll be like, it's about a 0.5.
So I've always been scared to death, because I sat there in bars in college and watched where the alcohol went, and it was certainly not what was rung in. How do you guys deal with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's why we started WISK originally, like it's evolved. But the reason is exactly that, is on average, basically 1 out of 5 shots goes missing on average. So it's a crazy stat, because it's like, it just kind of became accepted in the industry. But when I explain to people, like, imagine you were selling, I don't know, computers, and I told you 1 out of 5 computers were missing, you wouldn't be like, it's just the way the industry is. You'd be like, holy crap. So we usually start there. But the idea is, because what makes alcohol hard is you might have a bottle of tequila as an example, or typically many brands of tequila, but on one single brand, it's used in many different drinks. It could be a shot, a single, a double, whatever, but then a margarita, different, right? So it's hard to track, because even at the end of the night, if you physically look at it and it looks like some was used, there's no quick way to like look at the sales and be like, oh yeah, it makes sense. It's easy when things are by the unit. So like, you're selling bottled beer and you look at you could do some quick math, but it's hard when it's things like this. So with WISK, the first thing we did that was really hard and it took a while, but was build the database, and we would crowdsource it. So every time we got a new client, they would add to our database of bottles. And today we have a database of 200,000 bottles with the barcodes, the images, the weights, empty and full and all that. So that's what happens. And then with the Bluetooth scale, here's one as an example, they just put it on the scale and it tells them exactly what's in the bottle if it's open. If it's not open, they can just count it by units or cases. And the idea is every time they do inventory, because it's precise, we then compare that with what was sold using obviously the recipe mapping. And we compare those two and let them know where they're losing money and how much money. And then the cool thing that we do a little differently than other people is you can do what we call partial audits. So if you're always losing money on, I don't know, Casamigos tequila, you can say, you know what? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'm going to go in and just count my Casamigos. So it's like a 5-minute job. But because we're integrated with the POS in real time, we'll give them what we call the variance on just the Casamigos. So they can kind of like zoom into like an item. So, but you're right. It is a big problem, and it's the main one we've been tackling for years.
So logistically, am I just weighing every bottle at the end of every night or once a week, or do I have a ton of scales?
Good question. So logistically, most people do it on a weekly basis, but then they'll do the partial audits as often as they want. So some people might say, hey, my top sellers I want to do 3 times a week, or this week I'm having a problem with this bottle, I want to do it daily. But generally the full inventory, they'll do it weekly because that's usually the cadence that they'll also place their orders. So the kind of typical, I would just give a blanket kind of 80% of our customers, it's like, let's say Sunday comes along. It could be any day of the week, but let's say Sunday they do their inventory. Split up the work. Everybody counts a different location. Cool. It's pretty fast. They're happy. Done. Inventory is done. From there, someone places their orders. We recommend based on, sales data, this is what you should order. And then during the week, as those orders come in, they just verify what they ordered. And that's kind of the operational loop. Then on the data side, it's giving them those variance reports, the beverage cost, the overstock, dead stock, that kind of stuff. But that's it
reminds me of I see more and more of the whole. I'm going to use a camera and computer vision to track the inventory. Have you guys looked at it? What are your thoughts?
The great question. I love it. I love how you're asking good questions. The camera side is super interesting. Our philosophy is this. So our philosophy is we know, there's no secret. Tech is always going to evolve. It's not like it's easy to see. Look at computers, look at AI. Just look at ChatGPT in the last year, how much that's evolved. So there's no question, tech is getting exponentially crazier or better, I should say. And in that, we always knew the input would change. So we were never like married to the idea of Bluetooth scales, meaning when we started, we actually looked at like other ways and rulers and what about this and pictures and all kinds of different ways. But the conclusion was at that time, and still to this day, generally, it was the fastest for beverage. So, but having said that, we always knew that the core of WISK was all the back of house stuff. So the invoice processing, the way we count the inventory, the ability to edit, the way we handle variations. So if you use, a 1 liter bottle and a bigger bottle, but it's the same. So all these like kind of details. So that's our magic. It's like the brain of WISK. It just so happens that today the input of the counting is with a Bluetooth scale, but we're ready that if one day cameras are so good that everyone's using it, for us, it's just like an input change. It's like, okay, instead of using a Bluetooth scale, let's start leveraging these cameras. From what I've seen, the camera tech is really cool. From what I've seen, it's not really there yet at the bottle level. I see it being successful more like warehouse style things and maybe things like that. It hasn't been super great yet for the restaurant where things are, how it is, messy stock rooms. And so I haven't seen it being super, super efficient there. I've seen people using the camera stuff. I had a company I met was super cool. I wish I could plug them right now, but the name's slipping me. But they were focused on the beverage, on airplanes. So it was a bit easier because they would open the drawer and with the cameras. So that stuff, I see the application. I think for a full-on restaurant where you got tomatoes and proteins, people are trying, but I think the accuracy is not there yet. But I'm excited for it to get there.
No, we see the same thing on the food side. So, there are companies out there that are trying to do, order accuracy and quantify how many orders and what was used, based on the cameras. And, I always sit there and think as an ex-franchisee, I had a 300-pound meat slicer and we would break that and drop that on the floor. It wasn't easy to move. You put a camera in there, like my guys will find a way to break that. And secondly, I'm not sure that I would want everything that was going on in the restaurants recorded, and especially not recorded and classified by an AI.
Fair. That's fair. It's funny. And on the camera side, look, the tech's been getting better, but I always tell people, if you really think about it, casinos, like think about, I don't know, Caesar's Palace or whatever, they've had that camera tech for a while of like, if someone's punching in something in the POS and they're pouring a Johnny Walker Blue Label, like they've had that. So that's been around for like over a decade. So I think it's getting more interesting of like the camera detecting what is there. So not necessarily just with the POS. And I've seen it in grocery stores too, like as the cashier's punching stuff, the camera's there. So you can kind of spot anomalies and stuff of like, she didn't punch that, but there's that stuff like that. I think it'll get better and better. I think it'll get to the point where like, yeah, for sure the cameras will get pretty interesting. But I think it'll be a while, especially on the details of like what's in a bottle. Like that's where it gets a bit more trickier. It's not just a general stockroom or wine cellar. So the pitch I give people when at least is my point of view is like, even if tomorrow someone comes out with the craziest tech on cameras, the unfortunate part is that's only 10% of the solution. It's like, okay, cool. You made my counting better. Instead of, it used to take 5 hours, now I was using WISK and it takes 2 hours. Now with you, I've cut it down. But there's still going to be the element of the POS integration, the recipes, so there's still a lot of the invoice processing, the ordering. So I find there's still a big piece of that. And that's where I think we have a bit of defensibility, you know what I mean? But we're open. Like if there's people out there that create super cool tech, we're like, cool.
I mean, if there's a better way to collect the data and get it into my back of house, that's
right.
Fantastic.
Right, exactly. Which is something, yeah, you guys obviously are more than open to because you guys are processing all this crazy data. If someone get you data faster or better, why not, right?
Yeah, I always view it as there's I feel like utilities is the wrong word, but you get a POS. It's great at capturing information and processing transactions. You get that heart, my back of house system. It's keeping tabs on, my invoices and inventory and orders and all of that. You've probably got loyalty attached with something else, but how do you take all of this data and actually have something that can process it into your operations answers? I think that was always something we felt was missing in the tech stack.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right.
Didn't have a natural place.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love what you guys do because it's such an important part. And one thing I know it's gonna be hard to like summarize a ton of things, but one thing that comes to mind is for people listening, I know it depends on the type, like you said, barbecue restaurant versus restaurant XYZ. But are there certain questions that you see come up often enough that we can maybe share some with our audience of like, hey, listen, if you're an operator, these are probably things that you should think about. Example, what should I prep tomorrow? Like, are there certain things we can highlight to our listeners?
Well, first off, I'll give some general advice. Having gone and onboarded, hundreds of different brands, typically their management teams live in fear of underproducing a product. And I remember having, and whether you're using a ClearCOGS or not, I just remember having this conversation where, somebody raised their hand and said, well, what if a bus shows up? And I said, look, if a bus shows up, you're probably going to run out either way, but you probably only have a couple of buses show up a year. Do you really want to throw out food every day just on the premise that a bus may show up?
Yeah.
And the owner's like, no. And whether or not you used ClearCOGS or not, just solving that, getting that alignment with the management team that, don't live in fear of a bus showing up, you can see a drastic, decrease in waste, right off the bat.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice.
But I'd say it's all the things that you would normally expect. What do I need to do for prep in the morning? How much product do I need to have at shift change so that I'm not running around in the dinner rush trying to find more tomatoes that are sliced? I think one of the things that technology has really empowered is being able to make more granular decisions like, do I need to, bake more bread a couple hours prior to close? So I think that's where we started, was on that food prep and production side. Obviously, if you can do that, it's very easy to do ordering. It's very easy to do staff budgeting. But I think that's where I'd start.
That's really cool. And I wanted to ask you on the predictive side and the stuff you recommend, is it mainly related to the COGS, which I assume, but are you also helping a bit with the labor COGS? Like, are you helping with staff, scheduling? Hey, you don't need 2 people today. This person come in later, or is that maybe outside of the realm?
No, we absolutely do. We do staff budgeting, I would say. We are not a UI tool for you to go schedule all of your different employees. But if you want to know how many tickets you're going to sell every 15 minutes, if you want to know what revenues are going to be every 15 minutes, or, I always take everything back to Jimmy John's because that was my life. But I would want to base it on sandwiches sold because I don't need labor for drinks and I don't need labor for chips, but I do need labor to make the sandwiches and how many deliveries I'm going to take every 15 minutes. Those are the kind of things that we can pre-process that, provide all of that information, and then, you can schedule as you see fit.
That's huge. I love that. And one question that always comes to mind is, I think when restaurants use tech solutions, they always think about like, number one, how easy is it to use, et cetera. But the big thing is like, am I getting value? Am I getting a return on my investment? For me, it's a no-brainer. I hear these things, helping them prep, helping them schedule. How do you go about showing them how you're helping them? Like, how do you think about like the result of the action? So it's like, hey, I prepped that extra brisket. Thank you. But like, how do you, take credit or show them that like, hey, don't forget that was us,
So we asked this exact same question to one of the first brands we started working with because we wanted to know on their end, how are they going to quantify this and, justify it? Luckily, these were a bunch of ex-Cheesecake Factory executives. They knew exactly what they were going to do. So they set up a pre and post implementation study. What they basically did a control period, and then they did 8 weeks where they, tracked what their waste was and where it came from. And then they put us in place at, certain locations on certain items to see what the net decrease in waste was. And I kid you not, Angelo, like the first week, they stopped the operation, called everybody in the back of the store and said, what the hell happened? Because they'd done inventory and realized that they had sold more product, but they had ordered less product and that their food cost had gone down by a few percentage points.
Wow.
At the end of the month, pre-post implementation, they had saved $6,800 in the first location in the first month and dropped percentage points off the bottom line. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, we look at what you were doing prior and then we make sure it doesn't happen in the future. And usually it's percentage points.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, that makes sense. Now that you said, I'm like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And, to our restaurant listeners, one thing I always like to emphasize to them is, a lot of them realize this, but some don't. It's always sexier to think of top line than bottom line, but I'm always just like, guys, like if you're doing, I don't know, $3 million a year and you shave off 3%, like once you do the math and they're like, oh shit, that's, I don't know, 60 grand or whatever the math is. And that's 60 grand bottom line. That's not 60 grand of sandwiches sold and then you got to deduct labor. That's 60 grand bottom line. That's when their eyes start opening up. I'm like, take that number, multiply it by, I don't know, depends, maybe 3 or 4 or 5, depending on your percentages. But that would be the equivalent of top line. So when you're saving 50,000 because of your percentages on the COGS, let's say food COGS as an example, that might be $200,000 worth of sales revenue. You know what I mean? So when people start thinking like that, then they're like, oh shit, I get this now. Because 2-3% doesn't sound sexy, but it's hard to talk in percentages. But I think once people see the impact of what 2, 3, 4, 5% means, then their eyes light up.
Well, let's talk about it in real numbers. I'm a restaurant. I do $1 million a year. I've got a 10% profit margin. And I say, I would like, so, that's what, $100,000 I'm making. I'd like to make another $10,000 this year. Well, for me to get there, I basically have to generate another, $100,000 in sales. That's not easy to do. I got to comp 10% just to get that extra 10 grand. Yeah. I sure hope my math is correct on this.
No, it's good. It's good so far. I'm following you.
So if you want to make that extra 10 grand and do it on the bottom line, right? Go look at your food costs. Go look at your actuals and your theoreticals. My guess is you have a couple percentage points of a gap there.
Yes.
Close that gap a little bit just by making a few smarter decisions like how many briskets do I smoke or what do I need to order correctly? And all of a sudden I've changed nothing and I've made an extra $10,000. And I didn't have to hire more staff to do the extra $100,000 in sales. I didn't have to execute for the other $100,000 in sales. I didn't have to deal with the complaints from customers of those extra $100,000 in sales I sold.
I love that. I'm clipping that clip. That's a clip right there, because it's well said, and it's a great summary that I think more and more restaurateurs have to understand. Obviously, the more sophisticated ones get it right away, but for those others, it's like, man, once they see it, you see their eyes light up, because like, oh wait, you said it beautifully. Actual theoretical, close the gap a bit, and it's a lot more realistic than adding a ton on your top line. So I love that.
True story. So I was probably 23 at the time. I just turned around my first restaurant. I'd taken it from doing like 400,000 to 1.2 million. Wow. As a cocky 23-year-old, I felt like I was king and figured this whole thing out.
I mean, I would too. That's a pretty impressive change.
And so I'm talking to this great operator, one of the guys that, I think he had like 60 restaurants at that time. And I told him about it. And his response to me was, what did it cost you to grow sales that much? And it was like, well, shit, I lost a lot of money. And no, my food costs were not very good. And we had really high labor costs, and we had some bad habits as a result. And it was just one of those eye-opening moments of, yeah, you can grow top line, but it may cost you a lot to do it. And it may not be the right way to profitability.
That's fair. Really well said. Wise words, and especially for the first few stores, right? Because if you want to scale something that's repeatable, profitable, and not scale a bad playbook. So I love that. As we wrap up, I always love to know kind of what's next, right? So we're gonna plug you guys. We'll definitely talk more partnership stuff, but we'll plug you guys, the website. People could find you, ClearCOGS.com. What's next for you guys, right? Like, anything interesting for 2025 you want to share? I mean, you don't have to share anything, but if there's anything, I just want to give you the opportunity to share anything that's exciting or that you find exciting coming up.
Well, we're a startup. We've always got a million things going on that are exciting. No, but I would say this. What excites me most is as I look at the hospitality industry, right now we ask more of our managers than ever before. Yes. Not only do you have to be the HR person, but you've got to be the customer service person. You have to run the operation, hire the staff, train the staff, motivate the staff. And then at the end of the day, we ask restaurant managers to go into the back of the store and log inventory and manage the analytics and all of the cold supply manufacturing side of the business. And I sit here today and I don't think that we're ever going to get rid of the hospitality customer service side, the business of making memories. But I do think that AI does have the ability to take over the cold analytical part of the business that is necessary, but something that nobody really signed up for.
Agreed.
And I think that's probably one of the most game-changing things going on. So, and that's really where we're focusing.
I love that. Beautifully said. I always say that too. It's like a necessary evil. It's like you got to do these things, but I agree with you. I think that's one of the best places AI in general can help is the stuff that everyone knows they need to do, because it's you need to do it to run your restaurant. But if we can shave off time or automate it or whatever, like no one will miss counting inventory. No one will miss processing invoices, whatever it is, all the manual, tedious placing orders, figuring out what to order. Like, I agree with you. So I'm with you there. And I love that you guys have that mission. So, I want to plug you guys too. So just for people either looking for you, for ClearCOGS, for anything, feel free to plug away. So I know website is ClearCOGS.com. If people want to find you, feel free. Go ahead to share any links or places people can find you or anything else ClearCOGS related.
If you type in Matt Wampler on Google, I am sure that I will pop up. But feel free to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn. We always love talking with restaurants, even if you're not a fit. It's always a great conversation to see how we can help you in the future. If you're a restaurant that's on toast, we're actually working on right now, how do we take all of this technology we've built for larger brands and streamline it into a single click deployable solution for the independent restaurant out there. So you can, if you're on Toast, you can literally sign up for ClearCOGS for free and start receiving some of our preliminary reports. We'd love to have you on this journey with us. And
that's really cool.
Yeah, I'd love to allow you to see some of the usefulness of AI in today's restaurant.
That's really cool. I love that. So we'll definitely put a link. So for people out there, cool to know that if they're using Toast, there is that option. So that's really, really neat. And for everyone else, we'll put the links. They could sign up. I'm sure see a demo, get to talk to you, and hopefully things go so well they get to that therapy session, because that sounds like the fun part where they could just offload and you come in and solve all most of their problems, which is awesome.
And for all the WISK customers out there, you should get on. I think we have a form fill in the form that you want ClearCOGS on WISK, so that my developers all know that they need to make this a priority.
That's awesome. Yeah. If there's a demand, I'm with you. When it comes from customers, it's a lot easier to prioritize. So that's a good call out.
Same thing on WISK.ai. Go on WISK.ai and harass Angelo's people so we make this happen.
This is awesome. I love having you on, man. I'm sure this won't be the last call, but we'll definitely talk more about partnership plans 2025. So once again, Matt Wampler from ClearCOGS.com, the CEO and co-founder. Matt, this was so fun. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
If you want to learn more about WISK, head to WISK.ai and book a demo.